I believed in President McKay total. I believed what he predicted about it would absolutely come. I had no doubt about it.
There's no other place in the world as Laie.
Oneness in the gospel, but diversity in the cultures.
Everybody knew everybody and their families. So if Tutu over here needs help, anybody's family would come and help Tutu, you know? It doesn't matter whether that's your Tutu or her Tutu, you know? If she needs help, you help. And that's the way it was. So when the university started in here, we were still that way. The train used to come through Laie with the cane to the sugar mill in Kahuku when they did the sugar. Came all the way from Aloha. The train came through Laie, right next to Charlie. In fact, Charlie Goo's house stands on where the track used to be. Charlie Goo Jr. That's where the track used to go, because in that spot was the Goo store. I used to come right along the Goo store. We used to pull cane off of the train and sit on the side and chew sugar cane. That was our candy. You know, we had a small little store where that, by the Hukilau Cafe, that little store, that was our store. That was our store. That's where we bought our bread and milk, and it was called Pake Store. And that's where we went to get our, and the biggest thing was pake cake and soda. That was the biggest thing for us, besides chewing sugar cane on the side of the road after we peel it. And the boys, like my husband them, they would catch the train. They would jump on the train to go to Kahuku, to go to the movies, because that's where they had the one theater on this side of the island in Kahuku. So the boys would just jump on the train and go to Kahuku and go to the movies. The girls were not that brave, but the boys were. We did fun things like when it rained on the mountain, that river that's really now wide, you know, by Cacklefresh, it was a smaller river. The water would come rushing down from the mountains, and you would see the guys on banana stumps or whatever they could find rushing down in the water in the river, you know. They had so much fun.
At that time, back in the 50s and 60s, there were two stores. Laie Cash and Carry, I think it was called. That was Sam Choi's store. And the other was Brother Goo's store. I think it was just called Goo's store. I can't remember. But those were I believe, the only two. What? Oh, the Old Plantation store, I think it was called. The Old Plantation store that was run by Charlie Goo. And that was where the kids hung out. That was about the only place. During, you know, like in 55, 56, 57, before the new college was built.
One of the people who owned the property, for example, was an uncle by the name of William Maka'a, Uncle Willie. And up until the time of his death a few years ago, he was always swapping with the church. One of the things that was interesting was that when they announced that there was going to be a college and they had the groundbreaking, they had the groundbreaking on my Uncle Willie's watermelon patch. And I always thought that it was a waste of a great watermelon patch just to build a college, because he had great watermelon.
With the announcement that the church was going to build a school in Laie, a lot of people wanted to move to Laie. And Clissold was telling me about all the people that were applying for lots so they could build a house in Laie. And also, they had to make some new roads to handle additional people. Of course, the faculty was 20 families there, and then any other new people and other things that were happening, and so kind of had to organize additional streets and so on, because the town used to end at the Temple Road.
When I was growing up, Laie was only half the size. It came up to your Yosepa Street and down to Palekana Street. It wasn't even across. Kulanui wasn't even there. The main street into Laie was on Pu'uahi Street, just past the Buda Hole, Foodland, that little bridge, that road that's blocked now. That was the main turn into Laie. And then the other street was out by the Hukilau.
Clissold added new streets. He's so important. And some of the streets were named and some were not. And so I went into Honolulu and talked to them in there about what standards and what were the rules for setting up names. And I found that they didn't want any more haole names. They all had to be Hawaiian names. And they couldn't use any name that was used any place else on the island. And so I started working on names. And of course, we already had Lainihuli Street, which was the main street of Laie, and had a meaning for Laie. And so we kept that name. And Lainihuli, of course, was the name of the big home that was the mission home and plantation manager's home and all that, right at the head of Lainihuli Street. Kulanui, I use that name because it isn't a real Hawaiian word. It's a Hawaiianizing of big school. That's what it means in English, big school. But that's what people were using. And so I made it official. And the people in town accepted it. And I named Hali'a because of the temple.
Everything was open. There was the ocean, the beach, the mountains. It was, for me, the most wonderful thing that could have happened. All my time, spare time I should say, because I was given chores every day, was spent in these various areas. I was spearfishing, surfing, swimming, or hiking up in the mountains, picking up fruits and going hunting. It was just a wonderful upbringing.
This was all cane fields, watermelon fields, peanut, taro patches. It covered all of this area. And so we used to work in a taro patch, watermelon fields. They were all over Laie, even where the North Stake Center, just below the temple is, where the visitor center is. Just on that side, it was all peanut fields and watermelon fields this way, and taro patches and cane. And so it was only up to Yosepa Street. But when the university started, when the university was put over where the North Stake Center is, then they had to find places to house the faculty. And so gradually, a lot of the fields got taken away or removed to build homes for the faculty.
At first, it was a culture shock to see these changes, to see the roads dug up and streets going where there never were streets before, and sugarcane and taro patches being dried up and being cut down to make room for buildings. And I think in my grandparents' minds, it probably signified the ending of being able to provide for yourself. You'd have to depend on your own little land to plant or to do whatever. Whereas before, they could go to the taro patch, and that was theirs, and that was food for year round. The oldest person I met here in Laie was Kapulani Makahanohano. And if you could get into her home, in with her, you've made it, because she was a hard person. So being able to befriend her, Kiawe and I got to be a person that she could call on whenever she had a broken chair. She would call Kiawe, fix the chair.
Like my wife says, Kapulani, you know. She was the choice of all ladies that we knew in Laie. Most knowledgeable. She did so much for the community. She was a nurse who spent time in Utah, and then she came back and stayed here and took care of the lepers who lived in the back of the temple. And that was her. And she tells us stories that were never to be heard again. So it's in our minds, it's in our memory, it's in our heart.
I attended Laie Elementary School. My first teacher was Mrs. Laie in the 3rd grade. I had Mrs. Amoy Myers also as a teacher. Ruby Enos was one of the teachers there too. Her husband eventually became my bishop for me, and at that time when I first came into Laie, we had a leader named what is his name? Poi Kekoha, and he was such a strong leader. I remember how he would, I guess all the leaders at that time kind of took us boys or us young people and treated us like we were their children, and scolded us when we did something wrong and treated us really nice when we did something right.
There was this lovely man with a station wagon, and if you wanted to go to town, you called him up, and he came and picked you up in the morning at your house, and you rode into town with him wherever you wanted to go. He dropped you off, and then he would pick you up when you said, and he would bring you back in the evening. And that was something really different.
1931, I think, when they were building the first road around the island. And that Laie Point, the mountain that makes Laie Point, the hill, I should say, stuck quite far out on the island. And it was kind of in the way for where they wanted this road to go. And so the men were cutting off this nearby end of the point. And they were kind of up on the slope with picks and things. And in the process of picking, one of the men picked real hard, and his pick fell down and through a hole, and they heard it hit in some water down below. And so they cleared it away. All that they cleared that off, and there was a pool of water there. And it was fed by the ocean some of the times, and some clear water, or some non-salty water, both. And so, of course, once that was cleared away and the road went by, the kids, of course, started using it as a swimming pool.
A lot of the people now don't even know what Beauty Hole was or where it was. But of course it was across the street from Foodland, where those little houses are right next to the bridge. And it was a bottomless pit. But that's where we all learned how to swim, in that bottomless pit. And the reason they say it's bottomless is because nobody ever went to the bottom. And because the bottom half of it was salt water, then we knew that it was coming from the ocean. But then they had cars go in, houses go in. When we had tidal wave, there was a house there. The whole house went in, and cars off the highway, a bug, and all went in, so the pool became stagnant because it blocked the flow of the ocean water. And so they had to fill it with boulders and stuff, and so now that's why they have houses. But that's where we all learned how to swim.
And there's one Laie lady that I know that said, oh, I got my school money going down that swimming pool and diving for coins that the tourists would throw in. Not very many tourists came along in those days, but some did. And you know how people like to throw in coins, and so they would do it. And she said that's why she got her lunch money.
It was very simple. There was nothing complicated. In fact, everyone knew each other. And as I was growing up as a teenager, if I was hungry, I would walk into someone's house. If I wanted to eat Samoan food, I was passing a Samoan house, I would go in the house, knock, and if nobody was there, I would go in and look for food, Samoan food, warm it up, eat, clean up my mess, and leave a note and said, "Thank you for the food. I came over to eat." And so whatever you wanted to eat, the doors were never locked. Anyone was allowed in anyone's house as long as they cleaned up their mess. My neighbors was Tom Fanini and Anna, Konyan Au and Hattie, Clinton Kanahele and Kawana. And then we had a Japanese family, the Yano family. And that was about the only Japanese family that lived here in Laie. We had a Filipino camp, and that camp belonged to the plantation. And so in that camp, all the Filipinos lived there.
It's a wonderful place to raise a family. We have a problem. We're not perfect, but that's what we're here for, to improve ourselves. And you can't find a better place to do it than in our community.
Laie has a prophecy that has to be met, and it will continue to be that instrument in the hands of the Lord. I truly believe this, because when you think of what it was to what it is now, it couldn't have been possible without a greater hand involved.
And I was there when they decided to actually begin the Church College of Hawaii. They didn't know what to call it, so they just called it the Church College of Hawaii. And we both wanted to go teach in it, but they were just doing preliminary stuff, interviews, seeing how many students they could actually get, and figuring out all the things, because there was nothing in Laie to support a school. No homes, no campus, no student body, and no faculty. There was nothing. And President Laie, who had been hired to be the president, was talking with President McKay and saying, well, now we can't start right away because we haven't got any faculty, we haven't got any faculty homes, we don't have any students, and we don't have any campus. And President McKay said, well, we're starting the building this summer. And he said, I want the school, we've already waited too long. I want to start the school in this fall. And this was in the summer.
Well, when I first got into the labor mission, they put me with Brother Bo, who was tile setter in the bathrooms, and so I learned how to do that. Then they put me with Hathaway, an electrician. I learned how to do the electrical work. They put me with Brother Beeling and other people who did plumbing work. I went all the way around. I even learned how to thatch roofs at the Polynesian Culture Center.
I was teaching at Arizona State University, and I got a call from Church College of Hawaii asking if I would come back and teach, and I said, no, I don't want to come back over here. I'm assistant dean of students at a university with 30,000 students. I've just bought a house. My wife is having a baby, and and I'm finally making money. And so, okay, fine, thank you very much. And then about a week later, I got this telephone call. Ishmael, yes, this is Brother Kimball, and there was only one Brother Kimball. I said, hello, Brother Kimball, how are you doing? He says, fine, it's time for you to go home. It's time for you to go home. He had called Howard Hall back to run the seminaries. He had called Ron Enos to come back. He had called a number of other people to come back. He had called a number of people to go, Mitch Kalali, to go to work with the. So it was my time. There was this cadre of us who were Polynesians, Maoris and Tongans and this kind of stuff, and Hawaiians. And we were now supposed to go back and fulfill the destinies of those people there. And I said, but my wife is expecting a baby. And he says, if you do what the Lord wants you to do, you will be blessed.
But I remember, not only as a student, but when I came on the labor mission, I think it was the first time I met a Tongan. It was on my labor mission. And, we had met some Maoris. We had met, I grew up with Samoans, in Laie community. But it's funny how the church and the spirit, the spiritual aspect, really brings us all together. It ended up being such a fun labor mission. Every morning when we started our work, we'd have our breakfast, we'd go out, we have this prayer together, really a devotion. And then we go out to work together. And it's a laugh and laughter all day long and having a good time. You're working hard and everybody's playing tricks on you too. Everybody from nowhere, a piece of dirt comes flying. Who's the culprit? And hey, is this Tongan? You just meeting him and he's playing around with you already. David Mohetau, Sione Feng, all these characters. Tony, Polotu, I tell you, these guys are characters, but you get to really come together when you pray with each other and eat together.
I would try to imbue them with the enthusiasm that I felt because I knew with every fiber of my being that institution was something that had been direct inspiration from the Lord. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been.
It is to be the best university where students can learn about their world and themselves and the church and the gospel.
Working at the temporary buildings for those 2 years was very exciting, I think, because we were pioneers, We were in the throes of establishing a new college in Hawaii, and it was in Laie, because President McKay said the college should be built in Laie.
We had the best dormitory. All air conditioned, no windows, just big giant screen. They kept the mosquitoes out. And we all stayed at Kakela. The best place to be.
There was another girl dormitory located at Clissold Beach. That was called Lani Loa. And then we had the big white house on the top of Lanihuli, which was a former mission home. and that was called the Lanihuli Girls' Dorm. It was at this one single house, and that's where they dormed, and my mom just loved that job. I think more so because of the young people that came from all the different islands to attend what was then Church College of Hawaii. We had a number of very special people who would come over to our house. As a young person, I remember all these young adults coming over and calling my mom, Mom, and it just extended outside of the dorm to our home and to our family life.
3 in a room and their bathroom and a kitchen. And we could cook our own food, so the 6 of us would share with one person cooking every week for everybody. So every 6 weeks you would be the cook and you'd provide the food for all 6 girls. And that's what we did that first semester. I think we only paid $25 a month for staying in the dorm.
My mom and dad, even though my dad was not a dorm parent, he was just a natural part of my mom's responsibility as a dorm mom. And I do believe that they enjoyed being the parent figure for many of these young people that came from the islands. I don't remember a time when these young people were not at my home. They were there eating, laughing, just kicking back, just being a part of our family. And I don't think there was a distinction between the dorm home and my home, because as far as I knew, it was all one.
I'm glad to have had that chance of coming here, even though it was only for 1 year. Everyone worked hard. The faculty worked extra hard because they knew that what they did would encourage the kids to come back.
Even in Hawaii, 2/3 of the people in Honolulu still were going to BYU Provo or to the University of Hawaii. And, and I talk to my friends and this kind of stuff, and I tell them about CCH, and they'd look at me and they, oh boy, my goodness, you got country fever and this kind of stuff. You never catch me going there. I mean, Provo and UH were the big places for them to go and other types of things. And then you had that generation for whom now college was a first generation experience. 90% of the kids who were with me in school at that time were the first of their families to be in college.
I can recall there was many Tongans and Samoans and Hawaiians as there were any particular race. In fact, the Maori, we had fewer Maoris than any of them. There was a lot of Korean and Japanese were starting to build up. But we had a fairly even distribution of Pacific Islanders at the time that I came. And it was wonderful. I recall going back to the dorm at night feeling hungry, and they would bust out a can of corned beef. And we would open up a can of corned beef, and someone would bring some taro and watermelon. Don't ask me where they got the watermelon from. But right there in the room, we would just, have a midnight munchie.
I mean, it was just a fun time to be. There wasn't any place to go, anything to do, except to be with each other.
We played a lot of sports. They had a basketball team, but we didn't have a gym. It was done in Laie Park. It's still there today, where the Laie community uses it. That was our basketball court.
We had to just make do with what we had. And we did make do. Faculty members were able to, get what they needed to teach the students, and I had enough materials in my office to take care of, admissions and whatever I had to do, getting transcripts out and different things like that.
Well, when I arrived, there were 3 wards in Laie and 2 in Haula, nothing yet in Kahuku, nothing yet on campus. And so we've watched the church grow in this area, and it's been fun. It was still kind of a sleepy little village, but it was moving forward very rapidly.
I think we had a little bit of money for scholarships, but not enough, for just everybody who needed money to come to the college. We talked to them, and at that time it was just $30 a quarter. We were on the quarter system at that time.
The first class I had was the first class I taught, the first day of class, was a Math 10 class. And that consisted of Samoans and Tongans and Orientals. And I'd had virtually no instruction in how to pronounce the names. And they just thought that was so funny. They just hee-hawed, they laughed. Every time I'd try to call the roll down the names, they just thought that was hilarious because I just really bungled them.
Well, when it rained and would flood, and the old campus, you'd get on the canoe and go from building to building or walk. Campus was basically, school was closed, but you could still get around if you had a little skip or a little canoe to go from building to building. It was funny. We'd look across the street from where we lived and we could see the campus flooding, and there's no way school would be called off.
One of the things that we always remember when we talk about the early days at the college is that when it rained, it stormed, and the college became flooded. It flooded, and we got around the campus on rowboats.
So everybody would head to the beach, and you get together with your other classmates at the beach and talk story.
We felt like the community accepted us because we had substitute dorm parents who came from the community, like Rahab Au, Agnes Kanahele. They served as substitute dorm parent when the main dorm parent needed a break from us.
Oh, especially brother and sister Nawahine, they're one of the favorite dorm parents we had. They were very musical. We played a lot of music with them.
This was Hank Nawahine's parents.
We didn't know many Tongans. We met the first ones at college. First Fijian at college, or Indian. First of a lot of things. The college opened our eyes a lot. So memories are just, there was a tightness, a closeness about the campus that is, and I don't say it's missing, but it's just because it was different. The size was small, so you knew everyone and everything that was going on in everybody's life. And the faculty were close. The faculty were close to the students. Students would end up at faculty homes for meals or for socials. If there was going to be a wedding, they used the faculty backyard. If someone was being baptized, and because he was being baptized, his family was ostracizing him, faculty members stepped in and took him under the wing. That kind of closeness that we appreciated.
The things we dream of doing, helping each other, working together, that's the key. Just being there for each other.
BYU-Hawaii is truly a treasure, a pearl of great price, and that we should take this institution for our individual betterment in terms of education, job opportunities, as well as spiritual growth. It really is a gift from God to us.
I've gone to the campuses in Hawaii and on the mainland. They have all the academic tools to graduate students, but they don't have the tool that our church school has, and that is the spirit of the gospel, which is prevalent. You ask any guest who comes here, and he'll say there's something special about your campus.
Take advantage. The faculty members are fantastic, and the atmosphere, the environment, you're in the best environment you could probably be in a college setting.
And I'm drawing upon the people that I knew, like Dr.
Georgie and Brother Laird and Brother Dr. Hollingshead, they got involved. And the kids loved them. And they let the kids know that they loved in return through their actions.
This school has a particular mission. And we don't always understand what that mission is, but that doesn't matter. The Lord knows what that mission is. And those who are employed here, who serve here, are on that mission the Lord has. And they need to recognize that and feel like that they're on a mission for the Lord. Our students should be prepared to go out and serve. And we need to do everything in terms of the stakes and the administration and the faculty to prepare them to do that.
You've got to learn to love way beyond you've ever loved before. And you've got to learn people no matter where they're from, no matter what language they speak. If they're having trouble explaining things in the class, just love them and listen. And eventually they'll get it to you.
I would want to do for these young people what I would expect my own son and daughter to receive at any other university. If they were in the same bind, I would expect that my child could go to see someone and someone would put an arm around them and say, "Come, I can help you."
I hope that other teachers realize how lucky we are to know these students, to work with these students, to be teachers here, because they deserve our respect. And I hope that legacy was one I could leave, that we should respect our students.
And if you try, and even if you move that much, that's an increase. And then if you move a little bit more, it's another increase. The increases come in small steps. But these small steps become important steps.
You know, one gains his testimony a little at a time. As one grows, as one learns, one studies. And as you gain this testimony, you know, the way you teach, the way you think about your students, they change too. You become the kind of leader, as I mentioned, that I wanted to be.
Most of the brethren and the sisters have been influential in their home countries as they've gone back to strengthen the countries. And they've been an influence for good. And even with the local Hawaiians who attended with me, locally they've done well. And they've been an influence for good.
Their day-to-day influence with others, I think, is so much a part of President McKay's prophecy.
It doesn't matter where you go, somewhere, anywhere, you meet someone who was educated here and was so happy that they did.
That institution is one that David O. McKay was told by the Lord to get established way back in 1921. Took him a long time to get it done, but he never let up until it got done. And the consequence is tremendous scholars who've gone out and made a difference wherever they've gone in the world.
President McKay is right. Peace starts with us and in the hearts of the members of the church. That's the mission of the church. That's why the Father and the Son appeared to Joseph Smith. This was their message.